The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Windsor Castle, as Queen Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, arrived for what was supposed to be a routine family visit. His black Range Rover crunched over the gravel driveway, past the perfectly manicured gardens that had witnessed centuries of royal drama. Tom had no idea that this ordinary Tuesday would become the day that changed everything for the royal family. As a food critic and author, Tom was used to traveling with various equipment for his work. His trunk was packed with camera gear, tasting notes and samples from restaurants he'd been reviewing across Europe. The security protocols at royal residences had always been strict, but lately, they had become even more intense following several security breaches at other royal properties. Chief Security Officer James Morrison had been with the Royal Protection Unit for over 15 years. He knew every member of the extended royal family personally, including Tom, who had been coming to royal events since his mother married King Charles. However, Morrison had received new directives from the palace that morning. Every vehicle, regardless of who owned it, would be subject to thorough inspection. Tom stepped out of his vehicle, expecting the usual polite nod from security. Instead, he was greeted by Morrison and 3 other officers in full uniform. The atmosphere felt different, more formal than usual. Morrison approached with a respectful but firm demeanor. "Good morning, Mr. Parker Bowles," Morrison said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "I'm afraid we'll need to conduct a full inspection of your vehicle today, including the trunk. New security measures have been implemented across all royal properties." Tom raised his eyebrows in surprise. He had been visiting royal residences for years without such intensive scrutiny. However, he understood the importance of security and nodded his agreement. After all, he had nothing to hide, and he respected the need to protect his stepfather and the rest of the royal family. What Tom didn't know was that Prince William had specifically requested enhanced security measures for all visitors, including family members. The Prince of Wales had been receiving intelligence briefings about potential threats, and he wasn't taking any chances. His decision to tighten security had been made quietly, without consulting other senior royals, including his stepmother, Camilla. As Morrison and his team began their inspection, Tom chatted casually about his recent restaurant reviews and upcoming projects. He seemed relaxed and cooperative, which only made what happened next more shocking for everyone involved. The trunk popped open with a soft click, revealing what appeared to be ordinary travel items at first glance. Camera equipment, notebooks, and food samples were neatly arranged in professional cases. Morrison began his systematic check, photographing everything as per the new protocols William had established. It was Officer Sarah Chen who first noticed something unusual. Her trained eye caught sight of what looked like an inconsistency in one of the equipment cases. The weight seemed off, and there was a slight bulge in what should have been a flat surface. She quietly signaled to Morrison, who approached for a closer look. Tom continued talking, oblivious to the growing tension among the security team. He was explaining his latest article about sustainable fishing practices when Morrison carefully opened the suspicious case. Inside, beneath a false bottom that had been cleverly constructed, lay something that made Morrison's blood run cold. The discovery would have been shocking under any circumstances, but finding it in the possession of the Queen's son made it exponentially more serious. Morrison immediately activated his radio, calling for backup and requesting an urgent meeting with Prince William. The cheerful morning had suddenly transformed into a potential crisis. Tom's face went pale when he realized what had been found. His casual demeanor evaporated, replaced by genuine shock and confusion. He began protesting his innocence, claiming he had no knowledge of how the items had gotten into his equipment case. His voice cracked with emotion as he insisted that someone must have planted whatever had been discovered. Within minutes, additional security personnel surrounded the area. The routine family visit had become a full-scale security incident. Morrison made the difficult decision to detain Tom while they investigated further. Despite knowing him personally, protocol demanded that he treat this as a serious threat to royal security. News of the incident reached Prince William within minutes through the secure communication channels that connected all royal residences. The Prince of Wales was in his private office at Kensington Palace when he received Morrison's urgent call. The discovery threatened to create a scandal that could damage the monarchy's reputation and strain family relationships. William's reaction was swift and decisive. He immediately ordered a complete lockdown of the area and demanded that no information about the incident leak to the media. His years of military training and experience with crisis management kicked in as he began coordinating the response to this unprecedented situation. Meanwhile, Tom found himself in the uncomfortable position of being questioned by security officers who had known him for years. The surreal nature of the situation was not lost on anyone involved. Here was the Queen's son, a respected food critic with no history of criminal activity, apparently caught with items that could pose a serious security threat. The implications of the discovery extended far beyond Tom himself. If word of this incident reached the public, it could create a media firestorm that would overshadow all other royal news for months. The monarchy had weathered many scandals over the years, but having a member of the royal family, even an extended one, involved in a security incident was particularly sensitive. As the investigation continued, questions began mounting about how such items could have ended up in Tom's possession without his knowledge. The security team started examining the possibility that someone had deliberately planted the evidence to frame him or embarrass the royal family. The alternative, that Tom was somehow involved in a plot against the royals, seemed almost impossible to believe. The morning that had started so normally was turning into one of the most challenging days in recent royal history, and Prince William was about to make a decision that would shock everyone in the palace, including his own family members, who remained unaware of the unfolding crisis. Prince William stood in his office staring out at the London skyline while processing the gravity of the situation. The secure phone in his hand felt heavier than usual as he listened to Morrison's detailed report about the discovery in Tom's trunk. The items found were not just concerning, they were potentially explosive, both literally and figuratively for the royal family. The evidence included sophisticated surveillance equipment that had no business being in a food critic's luggage. Among the items were high-tech listening devices, encrypted communication equipment, and detailed floor plans of several royal residences, including areas that were supposed to be known only to senior security personnel. The most disturbing discovery was a collection of photographs taken from inside private royal apartments. Images that should have been impossible for any outsider to obtain. William's military background had taught him to remain calm under pressure, but this situation tested even his considerable composure. His stepmother's son was either involved in a serious breach of royal security, or was being set up by someone with extraordinary access to both Tom's belongings and highly classified royal information. Either scenario presented enormous risks to the safety and reputation of the royal family. The Prince of Wales made his first crucial decision within minutes of receiving Morrison's call. He ordered that Tom be moved to a secure location within Windsor Castle for questioning, but insisted that he be treated with dignity and respect. Despite the shocking evidence, William wasn't ready to believe that Tom was a willing participant in any plot against the royals. What made William's blood boil was the realization that someone had been watching his family's most private moments. The photographs found in Tom's trunk showed intimate family gatherings, private conversations, and even his children playing in supposedly secure areas of royal residences. The invasion of privacy was devastating, but the security implications were even more serious. William immediately contacted Sir Clive Alderton, the King's private secretary, and demanded an emergency meeting. However, he made a calculated decision not to inform his father or Camilla about the situation until he had more information. The last thing the monarchy needed was a family crisis that could be exploited by the media or by whoever was behind this apparent security breach. Back at Windsor Castle, Tom sat in a comfortable but secure room, trying to process what was happening to him. The food critic had built his career on his honesty and integrity, values that his mother had instilled in him long before she became queen. The idea that he was being accused of spying on his own family was both terrifying and surreal. Morrison entered the room with Detective Chief Inspector Helen Rodriguez, who had been called in from Scotland Yard's Specialist Protection Unit. Rodriguez had handled several high-profile cases involving threats to the royal family, and her reputation for thoroughness and discretion made her William's choice to lead the investigation. Tom's questioning began with gentle probes about his recent travels and work assignments. Rodriguez was particularly interested in his movements over the past month, when he had visited restaurants across Europe for a series of articles about emerging culinary trends. As they spoke, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Several of Tom's recent restaurant visits had taken him to cities where other members of the royal family had been conducting official engagements. While this could have been coincidental, the timing was suspiciously convenient for someone who might have been gathering intelligence about royal movements and security arrangements. More troubling was Tom's admission that he had received help with his equipment from a new assistant who had volunteered to organize his professional gear. This assistant, a woman named Elena Vasquez, had come highly recommended by a contact in the food industry. She had been particularly helpful in arranging his camera equipment and travel cases, exactly the items where the suspicious materials had been discovered. As Rodriguez dug deeper into Elena's background, red flags began appearing everywhere. The food industry contact who had recommended her turned out to be a fictional person with a sophisticated but fake online presence. Elena herself seemed to have appeared out of nowhere just 2 months ago, with credentials that looked impressive but didn't stand up to serious scrutiny. Meanwhile, William was conducting his own investigation into how such detailed information about royal security arrangements could have been obtained. He called together his most trusted security advisors for an emergency meeting at Kensington Palace. The group included Morrison, the heads of royal protection for each major residence, and cybersecurity experts who specialized in protecting the royal family's digital communications. The meeting revealed a disturbing truth. The royal family's security had been compromised from the inside. The floor plans and photographs found in Tom's trunk could only have been obtained by someone with extraordinary access to royal residences and computer systems. This wasn't the work of paparazzi or casual intruders. It required the kind of access that only a few dozen people in the world possessed. William's suspicions immediately turned to the staff changes that had occurred over the past year. Several new employees had been hired across different royal households, all with impeccable references and security clearances. However, the sophistication of the operation suggested that whoever was behind it had been planning for months or even years. The Prince of Wales made his second major decision of the day. He ordered a complete security review of all royal residences and a thorough background check of every employee who had been hired in the past 2 years. This was an unprecedented step that would disrupt normal palace operations. But William was determined to identify and eliminate the security threat. As the investigation continued, Tom provided increasingly valuable information about Elena and her methods. She had been particularly interested in his family connections and had asked seemingly innocent questions about royal residences and family gatherings. Tom, trusting and unsuspecting, had shared information that seemed harmless at the time but could have been pieced together to create a comprehensive picture of royal security arrangements. The most chilling revelation came when Tom remembered Elena asking about his mother's upcoming schedule and whether he would be attending any family events at Balmoral Castle. This suggested that the plot wasn't just about gathering information. It might have been aimed at a specific target or event. William realized that he was facing not just a security breach, but potentially an active plot against his family. The evidence suggested a level of planning and resources that pointed to either a sophisticated criminal organization or possibly even a foreign intelligence service. The stakes had just become much higher than a simple case of royal scandal. As the afternoon wore on, William prepared to make the most difficult decision of his life: whether to inform his father and stepmother about the crisis, knowing it would devastate Camilla, or to continue investigating quietly while the potential threat remained active. Time was running out, and the Prince of Wales knew that his next move could determine the future safety of the entire royal family. The tension in Kensington Palace was thick enough to cut with a knife as Prince William made the most controversial decision of his royal career. After hours of deliberation and consultation with his closest security advisors, he chose to keep his father and stepmother in the dark about Tom's situation while the investigation continued. This decision would later be seen as either brilliant crisis management or a dangerous gamble that could have destroyed the monarchy. William's reasoning was strategic but risky. King Charles was scheduled to attend a major state dinner that evening, with visiting dignitaries from Japan, and Queen Camilla was hosting an important charity event the following day. If either of them learned about Tom's situation, their emotional reactions could compromise both events and potentially alert whoever was behind the security breach that their operation had been discovered. Detective Chief Inspector Rodriguez had made significant progress in her investigation of Elena Vasquez. Working with international intelligence agencies, she discovered that Elena was actually Elena Petrov, a Russian national with suspected ties to foreign intelligence services. The sophisticated operation targeting the royal family was beginning to look like a state-sponsored espionage effort rather than a simple criminal plot. The implications were staggering. If a foreign government had successfully infiltrated royal security and was using Tom as an unwitting accomplice, it represented one of the most serious breaches of British national security in decades. The information gathered could be used for everything from blackmail to planning actual attacks on royal family members. William convened another emergency meeting, this time including representatives from MI5 and MI6. The intelligence chiefs confirmed his worst fears. Elena Petrov was known to their services as a highly skilled operative who specialized in long-term infiltration operations. Her assignment to target the royal family through Tom had been planned for at least 2 years, demonstrating the patience and resources of her handlers. Meanwhile, Tom remained in protective custody at Windsor Castle, struggling to come to terms with how thoroughly he had been manipulated. The security team had allowed him to call his office and cancel his appointments, but he was not permitted to contact his mother or anyone else in the royal family. The isolation was eating away at him, particularly because he knew Camilla would be worried about his sudden absence from the family dinner they had planned. The breakthrough in the case came when cybersecurity experts analyzing Elena's equipment discovered that she had been transmitting information to handlers in real time. The sophisticated communication system she had planted in Tom's gear was still active, providing an opportunity for William and the intelligence services to turn the situation to their advantage. William authorized a daring counterintelligence operation. Instead of shutting down Elena's communication system, they would use it to feed false information to her handlers while gathering intelligence about the broader spy network. This decision demonstrated William's willingness to take calculated risks to protect his family and country. The operation required Tom's cooperation, which presented William with a delicate challenge. The food critic was devastated by the realization that he had been used as a pawn in an international espionage operation, but he was also determined to help catch the people responsible for violating his family's privacy and security. Under Rodriguez's guidance, Tom agreed to maintain his normal routine while being carefully monitored by security services. He would continue his work as a food critic, but every movement would be tracked and every communication monitored. The goal was to identify other members of Elena's network while preventing them from realizing their operation had been compromised. The psychological pressure on William was enormous. He was effectively running a covert operation against foreign spies while maintaining his normal royal duties and keeping the secret from his own family. The Prince of Wales found himself lying to his father during their daily phone calls and deflecting Camilla's questions about Tom's whereabouts. As the counterintelligence operation unfolded, disturbing details about the scope of the espionage effort began to emerge. Elena's network had successfully placed operatives in several positions within the royal household staff, the security, services, and even among the contractors who maintained royal residences. The breach was far more extensive than anyone had initially suspected. William made another controversial decision. He ordered the quiet removal of suspected operatives from their positions without alerting them to the fact that they had been discovered. This required careful coordination with the security services and created significant logistical challenges, but it was essential to prevent the spy network from realizing how thoroughly they had been exposed. The most shocking discovery came when investigators realized that Elena's operation had been gathering information not just about the current royal family, but about future security arrangements for William's children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. The Foreign Intelligence Service appeared to be planning a long-term operation that could threaten the next generation of royals. This revelation pushed William's protective instincts into overdrive. The Prince of Wales immediately ordered enhanced security for his children and began making plans to temporarily relocate them to more secure locations. However, he knew that such dramatic changes in their routine would eventually raise questions from his wife Catherine and other family members. The strain of maintaining secrecy while protecting his family was beginning to show on William. His staff noticed that he was working longer hours, seemed more tense during public appearances, and was unusually short-tempered during private meetings. The burden of carrying such an enormous secret while making life-and-death decisions about national security was taking its toll. Rodriguez's investigation revealed that Elena had been planning to use Tom's access to plant additional surveillance equipment during upcoming royal events, including the annual Christmas gathering at Sandringham House. The timing suggested that the Foreign Intelligence Service was preparing for a major intelligence gathering operation that could have compromised royal security for years to come. William realized that he would soon have to make a choice that could define his future as heir to the throne: continue the dangerous game of counterintelligence while lying to his family, or reveal the truth and risk devastating his stepmother while potentially compromising the ongoing operation against foreign spies. The decision was complicated by intelligence reports suggesting that Elena's handlers were becoming suspicious about the lack of new information from their operation. If they suspected that their spy network had been compromised, they might activate more aggressive measures to gather intelligence or even attempt to silence Tom to protect their remaining operatives. As evening approached, William prepared for what could be the most challenging royal dinner of his life. He would have to sit across from his stepmother, knowing that her son was being used as bait in a counterintelligence operation, while pretending that everything was normal. The Prince of Wales was about to discover just how much personal sacrifice the crown would demand of him in defense of his family and country. The state dinner at Buckingham Palace proceeded with its usual pageantry, but Prince William felt like he was acting in a play where only he knew the real script. Across the ornate dining room, Queen Camilla smiled graciously at the Japanese delegation while periodically glancing toward the door, clearly expecting her son Tom to arrive for the family portion of the evening. William's heart ached as he watched his stepmother's growing concern, knowing he was the cause of her worry. King Charles, resplendent in his formal evening wear, was in excellent spirits as he discussed trade agreements and cultural exchanges with the visiting dignitaries. The king had no idea that his stepson was at that very moment sitting in a secure room at Windsor Castle, helping intelligence services unravel an international espionage network that had infiltrated the very heart of the British monarchy. During a brief intermission between courses, Camilla approached William with barely concealed anxiety. Her voice was low but urgent as she asked about Tom's absence. William had prepared for this moment, but lying to his stepmother's face proved more difficult than he had anticipated. He told her that Tom had been called away on an urgent work assignment, a story that felt like ash in his mouth. The Queen's maternal instincts weren't easily satisfied. She pressed William for more details, mentioning that Tom always contacted her before traveling and that his phone seemed to be going straight to voicemail. William found himself weaving an increasingly complex web of deception, claiming that Tom was likely in an area with poor cell reception while researching a story about remote restaurants. Meanwhile, the counterintelligence operation was reaching a critical phase. Rodriguez and her team had successfully identified 3 additional operatives within the royal household staff, including a maintenance worker who had been photographing security systems and a communications technician who had been copying encrypted data from royal computers. The scope of the infiltration was breathtaking in its audacity and thoroughness. The intelligence services had also made contact with Elena Petrov's handlers through the compromised communication system. Using carefully crafted false information provided by Tom, they were feeding the Foreign Intelligence Service details about fictional security vulnerabilities and non-existent royal travel plans. The goal was to keep the spy network engaged while gathering information about their ultimate objectives. Tom himself was struggling with the psychological pressure of his situation. The realization that he had been manipulated for months had shattered his confidence and left him questioning every interaction he'd had with Elena. The security team had provided him with psychological support, but the food critic was finding it difficult to reconcile his role as an unwitting spy with his identity as a loyal member of the royal family. The most disturbing aspect of the case emerged during the evening when cybersecurity experts decrypted more of Elena's communications. The Foreign Intelligence Service wasn't just gathering information for their own use. They were apparently planning to sell some of the royal family's most private secrets to tabloid newspapers and other media organizations around the world. This revelation changed the entire dynamic of the case. What had started as a national security issue was also a direct threat to the royal family's privacy and reputation. The intelligence service could potentially destroy the monarchy's carefully maintained public image by releasing intimate details about their private lives, family relationships, and personal struggles. William excused himself from the state dinner and retreated to a secure communication room within Buckingham Palace. The weight of the decisions before him was becoming overwhelming. He could continue the counterintelligence operation and risk having his family's secrets sold to the highest bidder, or he could shut it down and potentially allow dangerous foreign operatives to escape justice. The Prince of Wales made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. He authorized the intelligence services to accelerate their timeline and begin arresting the identified operatives within 24 hours. This meant that the delicate game of counterintelligence would soon come to an end, and he would finally have to tell his family the truth about what had been happening. Rodriguez received William's authorization while questioning another suspected operative at a different royal residence. The detective was impressed by the prince's courage in making such a difficult decision, but she also worried about the potential consequences for the royal family when the story inevitably became public knowledge. Back at the state dinner, Camilla's anxiety about her son had reached a breaking point. She was having difficulty concentrating on her conversations with the Japanese delegates and was becoming visibly distressed. King Charles noticed his wife's discomfort and began asking his own questions about Tom's whereabouts, adding another layer of complexity to William's already impossible situation. The evening took another dramatic turn when William received an urgent message from Rodriguez. Elena Petrov had somehow become aware that her operation had been compromised and was attempting to flee the country. Worse yet, she had activated what appeared to be a dead man's switch that would automatically release damaging information about the royal family to media organizations worldwide if she was captured or killed. This development forced William to make the most difficult decision of his life. He had to choose between protecting his family's privacy and ensuring national security. The intelligence services needed his permission to pursue Elena aggressively, but doing so could trigger the release of devastating personal information about every member of the royal family. William stepped outside onto one of Buckingham Palace's private balconies, looking out over the London skyline as he wrestled with an impossible choice. The city lights twinkled peacefully below, oblivious to the crisis unfolding within the palace walls. The Prince of Wales realized that his decisions over the next few hours could determine not just his family's future, but the future of the monarchy itself. The sound of laughter from the state dinner drifted through the balcony doors, a stark contrast to the turmoil in William's mind. His father and stepmother were inside, enjoying what might be their last peaceful evening for months to come. Once the truth about the espionage operation became known, their lives would be forever changed. As William stood alone in the darkness, he received another urgent communication from the intelligence services. Elena had been spotted at Heathrow Airport, apparently attempting to board a flight to Moscow. The authorities had a narrow window of opportunity to apprehend her before she escaped British jurisdiction, but they needed William's immediate authorization to act. The Prince of Wales looked back toward the warmly lit dining room where his family was hosting foreign dignitaries, then toward the distant airport where a foreign spy was attempting to escape with his family's most intimate secrets. In that moment, William understood that being heir to the throne meant making choices that no one should ever have to make. The crown was about to demand a sacrifice that would test the very foundations of his family's unity and trust. Prince William's hands trembled slightly as he gripped his secure phone, knowing that his next words would set in motion events that could not be undone. The intelligence services were waiting for his authorization to apprehend Elena Petrov at Heathrow Airport, but the consequences of that decision weighed heavily on his mind. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he gave the order that would change everything. "Take her down," William said quietly into the phone. but do everything possible to prevent the dead man's switch from activating. My family's privacy cannot become collateral damage in this operation. The response was immediate and coordinated. Elite units from the Counter-Terrorism Command and MI5 converged on Heathrow Airport, with precision that spoke to months of planning for exactly this type of scenario. Elena Petrov was apprehended just as she was boarding her flight to Moscow, but not before she managed to send one final encrypted message to her handlers. Back at Buckingham Palace, William rejoined the state dinner with a calm demeanor that masked the storm raging inside him. The Japanese delegation was discussing cultural preservation initiatives with King Charles, completely unaware that British intelligence services were simultaneously conducting one of the most significant counter-espionage operations in recent history just miles away. Queen Camilla's concern for her son had only intensified during William's absence. She approached him again during the dessert course, her worry now evident to anyone who looked closely. This time, her questions were more direct and harder to deflect. She demanded to know exactly where Tom was and why he hadn't returned her calls for over 8 hours. William realized that his web of deception was beginning to unravel. Camilla knew her son's habits too well to be satisfied with vague explanations about work assignments and poor cell reception. The Prince of Wales made a split-second decision that would later be seen as either compassionate or reckless. He quietly asked Camilla to meet him in a private anteroom after the dinner concluded. The arrest of Elena Petrov triggered a cascade of events across London and beyond. The 3 additional operatives identified within the royal household were simultaneously detained by plainclothes officers, their arrest carefully choreographed to prevent any of them from warning their colleagues or activating their own security protocols. Rodriguez coordinated the operation from a command center that had been hastily established in a secure location near Windsor Castle. The detective was simultaneously managing the arrests, monitoring the international response to Elena's capture, and preparing for the interrogation that could reveal the full extent of the foreign intelligence operation against the British monarchy. The most critical aspect of the operation was preventing Elena's dead man's switch from releasing damaging information about the royal family. Cybersecurity experts worked frantically to trace and neutralize the automated systems that Elena had established to destroy the monarchy's reputation if her mission failed. Every minute that passed increased the risk that intimate details about the royals' private lives would be broadcast to the world. Tom Parker Bowles, still in protective custody at Windsor Castle, watched the operation unfold through secure video feeds that the intelligence services had allowed him to access. Seeing Elena arrested at the airport was both satisfying and terrifying for the food critic. He knew that her capture meant justice for the violation of his family's privacy, but he also understood that the real consequences of the espionage operation were just beginning. The state dinner finally concluded with the traditional toasts and ceremonial exchanges. King Charles was in excellent spirits, praising the successful evening and looking forward to the continued partnership between Britain and Japan. He had no idea that his stepson was about to learn devastating news about his own son's unwitting involvement in an international conspiracy. William led Camilla to a small private sitting room adjacent to the main dining hall. The ornate room, decorated with portraits of previous monarchs, seemed to close in around them as William prepared to deliver news that would shatter his stepmother's world. He had rehearsed various approaches during the dinner, but now that the moment had arrived, all his prepared words seemed inadequate. "Camilla," William began, his voice heavy with the weight of what he had to reveal. "I need to tell you something about Tom, and I need you to understand that everything I'm about to say has been necessary to protect our family." The Queen's face went pale as she sensed the gravity of what was coming. Years of royal training had taught her to maintain composure in public, but in this private moment, her maternal instincts took precedence over royal protocol. She gripped the arms of her chair as William began to explain the events of the past day. William's account of the discovery in Tom's trunk, the identification of Elena Petrov, and the broader espionage operation left Camilla speechless. The realization that her son had been manipulated and used as a weapon against his own family was devastating beyond words. But what hurt even more was learning that William had kept this information from her while she worried frantically about Tom's welfare. The confrontation that followed was unlike anything the royal family had experienced in recent memory. Camilla's anger at being deceived competed with her gratitude for William's efforts to protect Tom and the rest of the family. The Queen demanded to see her son immediately, regardless of the ongoing security concerns, and threatened to leave for Windsor Castle, with or without William's permission. William found himself in the impossible position of trying to explain operational security to a mother desperate to comfort her child. He had to convince Camilla that her immediate reaction could compromise the ongoing investigation and potentially endanger Tom's safety. The intelligence services had warned that Elena's handlers might attempt to eliminate witnesses if they believed their operation had been fully exposed. The eager argument between William and Camilla grew heated as the Queen accused him of making decisions about her son without consulting her. She felt betrayed by the person she had trusted to protect her family, and she questioned whether William's actions had been motivated by genuine security concerns or by a desire to control the situation for his own political benefit. Meanwhile, Rodriguez received troubling news from the cybersecurity team. Elena's dead man's switch had partially activated before they could fully neutralize it. A limited amount of information about the royal family's private communications and personal relationships had been released to several media organizations around the world. The damage control operation that William had hoped to avoid was now inevitable. The partial activation of Elena's security protocol meant that the royal family's crisis was about to become public knowledge. Within hours, newspapers and websites across the globe would be publishing intimate details about the monarchy's private life, along with the story of the international espionage operation that had targeted them. William realized that his decision to keep the crisis secret from his family had backfired spectacularly. Not only had he damaged his relationship with Camilla, but the media exposure he had tried to prevent was happening anyway. The Prince of Wales now faced the prospect of explaining his actions not just to his family, but to the entire world. As word of the impending media storm reached Buckingham Palace, William knew that the most challenging part of the crisis was just beginning. The arrests and counterintelligence operation had been the easy part compared to what lay ahead. Rebuilding trust within his family while managing a public relations disaster that could undermine the monarchy's credibility for years to come. The first news alerts began appearing on media websites at exactly 2:47 a.m. London time, just as Prince William was finally attempting to get some sleep after the most exhausting day of his royal career. His phone buzzed with urgent notifications from the palace press office, each message more alarming than the last. The story that the intelligence services had worked so hard to contain was now spreading across the internet like wildfire. The headlines were devastating. Royal family targeted by foreign spies, Queen's son unwitting pawn in espionage plot, and most damaging of all, Prince William's secret operation, palace cover-up exposed. The media had obtained enough information from Elena's partial data release to piece together a narrative that made William appear secretive and controlling, while painting Tom as a victim of both foreign manipulation and royal family politics. Queen Camilla had spent the night at Windsor Castle, finally reunited with her son, but struggling to process the magnitude of what had happened to their family. Tom looked exhausted and emotionally drained as he recounted his months of manipulation by Elena Petrov. Mother and son held each other as they realized how close they had come to a catastrophe that could have destroyed not just their relationship, but the entire monarchy. The morning brought a crisis meeting that would determine the royal family's response to the media storm. King Charles, who had been awakened in the early hours with the devastating news, arrived at Windsor Castle looking older than his years. The king's anger at being kept in the dark about the situation was palpable, and his disappointment in William was evident to everyone in the room. "How could you make such momentous decisions without consulting me?" King Charles demanded, his voice carrying the authority of both a monarch and a father. "This family operates on trust and consultation, not unilateral action, regardless of the circumstances." William's defense of his actions was passionate, but ultimately unsatisfying to his family members. He explained his reasoning about protecting the state dinner, maintaining operational security and preventing panic, but his argument sounded hollow in the face of his family's pain. The Prince of Wales realized that his attempt to protect everyone had instead isolated and hurt the people he loved most. The palace's communications team was working frantically to develop a response strategy that could salvage the situation. The challenge was enormous. They needed to explain why William had acted unilaterally, justify the deception of other family members, and address the public's concerns about royal security without revealing sensitive details about ongoing intelligence operations. Detective Chief Inspector Rodriguez arrived at Windsor Castle with updates on the investigation that provided some relief amid the crisis. The arrests of Elena Petrov and her associates had successfully dismantled the spy network, and the intelligence gathered during the operation had revealed similar plots targeting other European royal families. The British operation had potentially prevented attacks on monarchies across the continent. However, Rodriguez also brought disturbing news about the scope of information that had been compromised. Elena's network had successfully gathered intimate details about the royal family's relationships, health concerns, financial arrangements, and personal struggles. The intelligence service estimated that the foreign operatives had accumulated enough compromising information to blackmail or embarrass the royals for years to come. The most painful revelation came when Rodriguez explained that Elena had specifically targeted Tom because of his access to his mother and his trusting nature. The spy had conducted psychological profiling that identified Tom as the perfect unwitting accomplice, loyal to his family but naive about security threats, successful enough to travel freely, but not important enough to receive intensive security screening. Tom's reaction to learning how thoroughly he had been analyzed and manipulated was heartbreaking to witness. The food critic blamed himself for the security breach and questioned whether his presence in the royal family made them all more vulnerable to future attacks. His guilt was compounded by the realization that his career and reputation would likely never recover from the association with international espionage. Meanwhile, the media coverage was becoming increasingly sensationalized as news organizations competed to publish the most shocking revelations from Elena's data cache. Private conversations between family members, details about the children's security arrangements, and even medical information about senior royals was being published without regard for privacy or safety concerns. William made the decision to address the crisis publicly, against the advice of palace communications experts who preferred a more measured response. The Prince of Wales believed that the royal family's credibility could only be restored through transparency and accountability, even if it meant acknowledging his mistakes in handling the situation. The press conference that William called for that afternoon would become one of the most watched royal events in recent history. Major news networks around the world interrupted their regular programming to broadcast the Prince of Wales's statement about the espionage crisis and his controversial decision-making during the investigation. Standing at a podium in the state dining room at Windsor Castle, with his family seated behind him in a show of unity that had been difficult to achieve, William faced a room full of skeptical journalists and cameras broadcasting to millions of viewers worldwide. The future king knew that his words could determine not just his own fate, but the future of the monarchy itself. Yesterday morning, I was faced with an unprecedented threat to my family's safety and our nation's security, William began, his voice steady despite the enormous pressure. I made decisions that I believed were necessary to protect both, and I take full responsibility for the consequences of those choices, including the pain they have caused my family. The questions from the press were aggressive and unrelenting. Journalists demanded to know why William had acted without consulting other family members, whether he had exceeded his authority as heir to the throne, and what measures would be taken to prevent similar security breaches in the future. Each answer seemed to generate 3 new questions, creating a spiral of scrutiny that threatened to overwhelm the palace's crisis management efforts. The most difficult moment came when a reporter asked Tom directly about his feelings toward William's handling of the situation. The food critic's response would be quoted in newspapers for weeks to come. Prince William saved my life and protected our family from a threat we didn't even know existed. I'm grateful for his courage, even though I wish the situation had been handled differently. Queen Camilla's brief statement was even more powerful in its simplicity. My son was used as a weapon against the people he loves most. Prince William's actions prevented that weapon from causing irreparable damage to our family and our country. While I wish I had been informed sooner, I understand why secrecy was necessary. King Charles's endorsement of his son's actions was more measured, but equally significant. Prince William faced an impossible situation with courage and wisdom. His decisions were made with the best interests of our family and our nation at heart. While we will review our crisis management procedures, I have complete confidence in his judgment and his commitment to protecting the monarchy. As the press conference concluded, William felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The immediate crisis had been addressed, but the long-term consequences for the royal family's reputation and internal relationships remained uncertain. The Prince of Wales had learned that leadership sometimes required making choices that hurt the people you're trying to protect, and that the crown demanded sacrifices that extended far beyond personal comfort or convenience. 3 months after the espionage crisis that had shaken the British monarchy to its core, Prince William stood in the same state dining room at Windsor Castle where he had held his historic press conference. This time, however, the atmosphere was markedly different. The room was filled with intelligence officials, security experts, and international dignitaries who had gathered to celebrate the successful dismantling of what investigators now called the most sophisticated foreign intelligence operation ever launched against a European royal family. The investigation had revealed that Elena Petrov's network was just one part of a massive international conspiracy that had targeted royal families, government officials, and business leaders across multiple countries. The intelligence gathered during the British operation had enabled authorities in France, Spain, Belgium, and the Netherlands to identify and arrest dozens of foreign operatives who had been conducting similar infiltration campaigns against their own institutions. Tom Parker Bowles had emerged as an unlikely hero in the aftermath of the crisis. His cooperation with intelligence services had been instrumental in unraveling the entire spy network, and his courage in testifying against Elena Petrov had helped secure convictions that would keep the operatives in prison for decades. The food critic had also become an advocate for security awareness, working with authorities to educate other potential targets about the sophisticated manipulation techniques used by foreign intelligence services. The personal relationships within the royal family had also healed and evolved in unexpected ways. The crisis had initially strained the bonds between family members, but the shared experience of overcoming such a significant threat had ultimately brought them closer together. Queen Camilla had come to understand and appreciate the impossible position William had been placed in, while King Charles had gained new respect for his son's ability to make difficult decisions under extreme pressure. William's handling of the crisis had transformed his public image from that of a traditional royal heir to a modern leader capable of protecting national interest while maintaining family loyalty. Public opinion polls showed that his approval ratings had actually increased following the revelation of his secret operation, with many British citizens expressing admiration for his willingness to make personal sacrifices to protect both his family and the country. The security improvements implemented in the wake of the crisis had revolutionized protection for the royal family. New protocols required extensive background checks for anyone with access to royal residences. Advanced cybersecurity measures protected all royal communications, and sophisticated surveillance systems monitored for potential threats. The changes were comprehensive but implemented in ways that maintained the accessibility and public engagement that were essential to the monarchy's role in British society. Elena Petrov's trial had become an international sensation, revealing details about foreign intelligence operations that shocked even experienced security professionals. Her testimony, given in exchange for a reduced sentence, had exposed recruitment techniques, operational methods, and target selection processes that had previously been unknown to Western intelligence services. The information she provided continued to yield arrests and convictions. Months after her own trial had concluded, the media attention surrounding the crisis had also forced important conversations about royal privacy, national security, and the balance between transparency and protection. New guidelines had been established for reporting on royal security matters, and several news organizations had voluntarily agreed to additional restrictions on publishing information that could compromise ongoing security operations. For Tom, the experience had been both devastating and transformative. While his career as a food critic had been temporarily derailed by the scandal, he had found new purpose in his security advocacy work. The empathy and understanding he brought to helping other victims of manipulation had made him an effective spokesperson for awareness campaigns, and his insider knowledge of how sophisticated deception operations worked had proven invaluable to training programs for potential targets. The international implications of the crisis had extended far beyond the British royal family. The evidence gathered during the operation had prompted a comprehensive review of security procedures for government officials, business leaders, and other high-profile individuals across the Western world. The revelation that foreign intelligence services were using such sophisticated long-term infiltration techniques had fundamentally changed how democratic nations approached counterintelligence and personal security. William's relationship with his role as heir to the throne had also evolved significantly. The crisis had taught him that modern royal leadership required not just ceremonial duties and public engagement, but also the ability to make strategic decisions that protected national interests. His experience managing the espionage crisis had prepared him for the complex challenges he would face as future king in an increasingly dangerous and interconnected world. The technology recovered from Elena's operation had provided British intelligence services with unprecedented insight into foreign surveillance capabilities. The sophisticated equipment she had used represented advances in spy technology that were years ahead of what Western intelligence agencies had previously encountered. The knowledge gained from analyzing these tools had already led to improvements in British counterintelligence capabilities and had been shared with allied nations to enhance collective security. William reflected on the events that had transformed his family and his understanding of royal responsibility. He realized that the crisis had ultimately strengthened the monarchy's position in British society. The public's response to the threat had demonstrated continued support for the royal family, while the successful resolution of the crisis had proven that the institution could adapt and respond effectively to modern challenges. The ceremony at Windsor Castle concluded with presentations to the intelligence officers, security personnel, and other professionals who had worked tirelessly to protect the royal family and dismantle the spy network. William's speech thanked them not just for their professional expertise, but for their discretion and sensitivity in handling a situation that could have destroyed his family's unity and public standing. Looking toward the future, William understood that the lessons learned from the espionage crisis would influence his approach to royal leadership for the rest of his life. The experience had taught him that protecting the monarchy sometimes required making decisions that were painful in the short term, but essential for long-term survival. He had learned to balance transparency with security, family loyalty with national duty, and traditional royal protocols with modern leadership requirements. The final chapter of the crisis came when Elena Petrov was sentenced to 25 years in prison for espionage, with the judge noting that her operation had threatened not just the British royal family, but the democratic institutions and international relationships that depended on trust and security. The sentence sent a clear message to other foreign intelligence services that such operations against British institutions would face severe consequences. As the sun set over Windsor Castle on the day of the commemoration ceremony, Prince William stood with his family in the same gardens where the crisis had begun months earlier. The experience had changed all of them, but it had also proven that the bonds holding the royal family together were stronger than the forces trying to tear them apart. The future king had learned that the crown he would one day wear came with responsibilities that extended far beyond ceremony and tradition, encompassing the protection of both family and nation in an increasingly complex and dangerous world.